This is my MS story. I was diagnosed with MS in 2012. I had just started training for a 100-mile bike ride. I had done them previous years, and at least the 72. I hadn't done the 100 yet, but I was training with my friend Jana. She'll forever be in my MS story. So as we got training, I noticed that my heart rate would go crazy. And every time I tried to go up a hill or I would push it a little bit, then my heart rate would race. And I just thought I was getting older. Just thought I'm 39 and this is just how it's gonna be. So I kept pushing. We trained for the next few months and kept going. And the event came in June. It was the first weekend in June, and about mile 72, we went to go up a hill and I really struggled. I almost fainted. And so when we got to the top of that hill, I went to have my heart rate checked at the EMTs, and it took about 25 minutes for my heart rate to come down. They didn't want me to continue, but I pushed for continuing on. So they said they would just check on me. So I had a SAG van that was driving around the rest of those 20 plus miles and checking on me to make sure. Well, I finished the ride, cried at the end. Something in me said maybe I wasn't gonna do that ride again. And by the time I got home, I was so fatigued and so tired, but I chalked it up to who wouldn't be tired at a 100-mile bike ride? And so I kind of ignored what was happening, and I slept for the next 2-3 days and went back to work. But I started to have these almost like hot flashes where my heart rate would race and I'd get really flushed and I would have to pull over, stop driving, and that continued. I went to see my primary care doctor. He didn't know what it was, so he sent me to a heart doctor. They put me on a monitor for a week. That didn't have any results, so they sent me back home. Blood work was back normal. It was getting really frustrating. And about 4 weeks later, I went to get up one morning and the room was spinning and I couldn't stand up straight. And so I went to see my ENT, who ordered an MRI. I thought he was ordering an MRI of my sinuses. Thought, well, maybe I've got a sinus infection and I've got vertigo. But he did order the MRI, had my MRI done, and when the results came in, I went by myself thinking I'm gonna need to have surgery on my sinuses, and he looked at me and just said, "I'm sorry to tell you, but the results of your brain scan is it looks like you have MS. You've got all these white dots over your brain. Some white matter is totally fine, but mine lit up like a Christmas tree." And so he recommended that I go see a neurologist. And all I remember thinking is something's wrong with my brain. I didn't know very much about MS. I knew it was neurological, but it was a lot of information to process. And of course, I Googled everything, and the worst case scenarios come out from when you Google. So I was fortunate enough to get into a neurologist through connections fairly quickly, and had a diagnosis that was confirmed by that July. So this had only been a couple of months from doctor to doctor. By the time that I had seen my neurologist, within hours, I was on IV steroids, which will take the symptoms back down fairly quickly. So within 24 hours, I was doing much better. But now there's a lot of information being thrown at me about different types of medications, what my future is gonna look like. And it was overwhelming. It was so much information and so much talk about what was going on with my brain. We need to do another MRI for my cervical spine to make sure they wasn't on anywhere else on my spinal cord. So MS is the myelin that's around your nerves in your brain starts to deteriorate, and it misfires signals to the rest of your body. And depending on where that's happening in your brain, you can have different symptoms happening. So you may see somebody that's in a wheelchair because they have it more on their spine. I had one that was sitting very much on my balance center, and so that's why I was really off balance. So common things with MS: chronic fatigue, pain, weakness, numbness, muscle spasms, things like that are happening. I have intermittent remission MS, which means that I will relapse off and on. So the medication that they put you on, there's no cure, but they're trying to slow down the disease and keep you from relapsing, because every time you relapse, you may not go back to that beginning state that you were at. It's kind of a tick-tock effect. Once that damage to the myelin sheath is there, it leaves a lesion. And so there is permanent damage that is lasting. What I commonly deal with now is a lot of chronic fatigue. I'm in pain every day, and mostly in my joints, in my muscles. When I relapse, it's usually me in bed all day long. Now, I don't let everybody see that, and I do get a lot of that, but you look so good, you're in class. Well, I actually feel the best when I am teaching and when I am moving. And then I may go home and crawl right back into bed. I just got through a relapse, but nobody sees that. I'm not going to post it. I try to keep the humor in what I deal with. I have short-term memory loss quite a bit, and so my kids and my family get very used to not asking me, "Don't you remember?" Chances are, I probably don't. And it could be 30 seconds or more. We could be having family prayer, and I'll say, "Who's going to say it?" And they're like, "We just had that." And I hope it was good. So I just, go with the flow a lot. It's been good that I don't try to figure out what the future is going to hold, and I just live my life to the fullest now. My hope for having these MS events is that others out there will know that there is this huge, huge support group. I am on a monthly IV that doesn't have side effects. The first one that they put me on 8 years ago gave me the flu every weekend. So I'm grateful to be on something that is doing its job. It is not cheap, but you do what you have to do. I hope that others will reach out through all these events that we are doing. And if you know of anybody that has MS or needs support, please have them get in contact with those of us who are running these events, and we'd be more than happy to talk to them and get them some extra support.